Hell of a coincidence! I was far from the quiet cul-de-sac and its unchanging comfort. We have two garages and identical mailboxes neatly lined up along the street, barbecue grills in each backyard. Typically American, repetitive 1,200-acre lots with more than nice housewives in every third house and mostly average-looking ones in the rest. Tonight I'm going to Rainbow Row along the Battery on East Bay Street. This postcard shows the peninsula of Charleston, South Carolina, and the last place in town a first-class detective would go on a rainy Friday evening in late October. When I arrived, there were blue and red colors already flashing, and a uniformed couple standing guard on the sidewalk in front of the pastel green Flemish tourist attraction. I turned on my blinkers and parked my car in the second row next to the designated car at the next house to survey the whole scene. Several passers-by were gawking on both sides of the street, curious to know what had happened on the busy pedestrian street. One of the employees was waving to people and struggling to keep a seat vacant. "Welcome to the ranks of the rich and beautiful, George," a chubby large man said to me as I entered the first-floor lounge. The big man was this week's night sergeant, a gregarious fellow named Paul Montague, who held the county record for the largest sandwich ever eaten by an officer in the Charleston County Sheriff's Department. That was a 60-inch French roll stuffed with meatballs, marinara, and a half-pound of mozzarella cheese. A week later, he repeated it. Among other things, he was a skillful officer, and I enjoyed working with him. "The crime scene is upstairs, second room on the right. It's not too messy this time." I looked at him and grinned slightly. "That's a good thing, right?" The last case we worked together was in North Charleston when 3 Mexican illegals fashioned cartel ties, apparently because of a bad drug deal and a revenge killing. Things were really bad there. If it's not the same mess now, I'd appreciate it. I started up the stairs and noticed a couple boards creaking noticeably. When I reached the landing and turned down the hallway, everything seemed to be in its place. But if anything was out of place, the techs would deal with it. The door to the room was a double door, and as I entered, I looked around. 2 victims. Maybe 2 victims. It could have been either a murder or a suicide, right? Never mind, it's still a double homicide. The man is lying with his back against the headboard, naked, with 2 entry wounds on his chest, exactly in the middle. The woman lying across his lower torso has 5 entry wounds in the middle of her back and 4 on her buttocks. Someone really didn't like her. The techs found 12 shell casings, one of which had penetrated the headboard and embedded itself in the wall behind him. "George, this guy is Carlos Pina, 28 years old, originally from St. Lucia and worked for a construction company in Edisto. He has a wife and, judging from the pictures in his wallet, a couple kids. The woman is Lucy Steinman, 39 years old, a socialite in town, married to Marin Steinman, the official owner of a large property. We're still trying to find him." "Thanks, Paul. Technicians say the bullets are 9 millimeters, but no weapons were found at the scene, so someone killed them and got away. Is there security at the house?" Paul just shrugged and said he would find out, but he needed to find the husband to gain full access without a warrant. As I surveyed the whole scene again, I noticed a yellow silk scarf off the side wall of the room next to the dresser facing the bed. Leaning over to pick it up, I felt a stab of fragrance, familiar and expensive, but I knew what it was. It was Flower Bomb toilet perfume by Victor and Rolf. I'm familiar with it as I bought this expensive gift for Michelle's birthday a few months ago, along with a collection of silk scarves. Hell of a coincidence. Michelle Rojan was visiting her sister in Savannah and had left there yesterday morning, so when I turned the key in the front door, I realized the house was empty except for the guard, a 40-pound clod of joy in the form of Maxwell, our Doberman Pinscher. He was already at the door before I put the key in the lock, snorting in anticipation, and when the door opened, he was already practically squatting, waiting for his kiss, and he got it. And I went back into the kitchen, dropping the keys and soft pouch on the kitchen table. Michelle, like me, was 33 years old. We had no children, but we were fitness buffs and trying to pursue the American dream here in this small suburban neighborhood in northern Mountain Pleasant. This was my first marriage, hers was my second, and after 4 years, things seemed to be working out. A couple years ago, Michelle left her job on the Mountain Pleasant Planning Commission and started selling real estate. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be much to it, but she works with Carol Bigsby for Carter's firm. Carol is a cheating neighbor and has a house on the next street over. Her husband left her 3 or 4 years ago, taking their 2 kids, after catching her in the middle of the day in his bed with his boss. Since then, according to word of mouth, she slept with a lot of men from a couple of neighboring blocks away. I know word of mouth isn't always a reliable thing, but she jumped on me right in the living room while Michelle was in the shower, jumped on top of me. Of course, he's a mind of his own, but luckily I had enough fortitude to easily overpower him. So I have concerns about how Michelle will work with her, especially because the boss is the same one who slept with Carol, which precipitated her divorce. In the end, Michelle won, and now sells luxury real estate in Charleston and Kiowa. Her hours are almost as irregular as mine. I am Detective First Class George Rojan of the South Carolina State Law Enforcement Division, better known colloquially as the SVPD, working for investigative services in Charleston. We are called in cases of suspicious death of an alien, like this one right now in the case of Carlos Pina, who was a legal resident alien. This has given us kind permission to participate at this point. The next morning I got up early, left the house, and headed downtown. We were getting processed forensic packages first thing in the morning, and by the time I arrived, the package was ready for me. Before I could make sense of it, one of the support staff poked her head in the door. "George, Sergeant Montague from Charleston County delivered the evidence kit on DVD. He's instructed to let you know that they got a court order last night and seized several security DVDs and a hard drive. These are copies. I just need you to sign for them." She leaned over me with her full breasts almost touching my face and smiling held out her pen. If I was a slacker, I would have been up to my balls in it many months ago. I signed in the right place and watched my ass, covered by my skirt, float out the door. Some future husband-to-be would be very lucky. The note at the top of the pile said, "Don't look through this around the kids, George, and keep some paper towels handy." Okay, he's slick, but he's still the best sergeant in Charleston. I set the stack aside and turned my attention to the stack of evidence. Mr. Marin Steinman had not yet been found, but was considered a person of interest, which might change once the DVD identified others, if they existed. In any case, we all wanted to find him. I was pretty sure George and the Charleston County people were already on it. Later that day came the OHP lab report on ballistics, and an indication that all shots were fired from the same 9mm weapon, most likely a semi-automatic pistol, and that each shot was fired from the side of the bed near the footboard. Based on the trajectories, they estimated that the shooter held the weapon about 1.5 meters off the floor, making the perpetrator's height between 5'68" and 5'98", depending on how he held the weapon. The accuracy of the lab forced me to smile. They always say these things with absolutely stone faces. For all I know, it could have also been a 5'7" chick standing on a ledge by the bed. In the evidence bag were several photos of the deceased, as well as several photos of the Steinman couple found in the house. According to the identification card, he is 52 years old, but he does not look older than 45, appears trim and attractive in addition to his obvious wealth. This explains his attraction to his wife, however, a now deceased wife. By any standard, Mrs. Steinman is a beautiful woman, due to having all the accessories of the good life. The size of the stone in the ring removed from her hand would almost pay for my house, or at least leave a hell of a dent in the mortgage. Carlos Pina, on the other hand, was an unremarkable stocky jock. Apparently, he subcontracted construction work on a few projects between here and Hilton Head. I guess he was just a handsome toy for the missus. Most likely we'll find that their paths crossed somewhere on the hotel grounds or in a bar, and the next thing he knew, he was hooking up with some rich guy's wife and getting paid the usual fee. It's a story we've all encountered hundreds of times on our path, though most of them don't make it into the murdered ones on Rainbow Row. "Hey, baby, are you okay?" Michelle asked me when I called her late one night after I got home. "I'm fine. What about you and Monique? Your mom called early yesterday morning trying to reach you, and I told her that cell service from Telcom in Savannah sucks and to let her call Monique." "Well, I didn't say sucks, but you get it." "You'll make your mom mad if you start talking dirty to her, George Rojan," she joked. It was one of our inside jokes. Her mother told the girls that she had tried phone love a few times and got addicted to it for a couple of months until she realized she preferred real love and started dating a couple of other widows in the process. That's all I wanted to know. I plan to sleep over one more night and will come back tomorrow night. Maybe we can hit a late dinner when I get back. Michelle, honey, that would be great, but just a heads up, I may not be available. I'm working a murder case in the East Bay on Battery. It seems a love nest in the Money District was shot up last night, and I have 2 bodies and a missing husband. A long pause followed before she answered. For a moment, I thought the call had been interrupted. Oh, that's terrible. Let's hope we can still make it happen. Look, I love you, George. I'll see you tomorrow. We finished talking, and I set up my laptop to watch a DVD from security about yesterday's murder scene. Maren Steinman spent a lot of money on video security. This wasn't the usual black and white grainy crap you buy at the discount store. This was high-end product, color, digital, high resolution with precision zoom, offloaded to a monstrous multi-terabyte drive. He had cameras in every room downstairs, and one each in the master bedroom and hallway on the 2nd floor, as well as in every hallway on the next 2 floors. I poured myself a light beer and leaned back in my chair with headphones to drown out the background noise. I put the first DVD on the mark, starting at 9 p.m., when motion and sound activated the camera at the entrance to the house on the 1st floor. There were 2 victims entering the house and not really holding back their voices. From the sound of it, both were drunk. They hung around the house making drinks, and after a few minutes, Mrs. Steinman led an obviously grateful Mr. Pena up the stairs to the master bedroom. The great thing about my job is that I need to pay attention to detail. That's how we solve most crimes, unless it's by the stupidity of the perpetrators. At least Maren Steinman provided details with stunning high-resolution clarity. Lucy Steinman dropped to her knees, slowly unzipped her lover's pants. At some point, he lifted her up and laid her on the bed, removing her clothes in the process before she lay back on the pillows. For the next few minutes, Carlos just lay there, enjoying it. Now I realized what Paul meant when he said he needed paper towels. A few moments later, a trim figure dressed in black, with a hood over his head, came into view and, without hesitation, quickly fired 2 shots at Carlos Pena. The next shot struck the headboard, and the gunman gestured for Lucy Steinman to lie across the first victim. A moment later, 5 shots followed in the middle of her back. The perpetrator then kicked Mrs. Steinman in the heel and walked to the edge of the bed before firing 4 shots into her buttocks, clearly in anger. I reeled back again to look at the perpetrator's wrist. When the gunman had fired in a rage, the black sleeve on his right arm had lifted just enough to reveal a silver bracelet with what I took to be an Indian pattern. I didn't make it out. Shot screened it to disk and ran the video again. You won't be sleeping with other women again, that's for sure, motherfucker, the killer said in her accent. I knew now that she was closer to the bottom line, 6'70" or so, and knew Pena. Steinman was a minor cheater. Paul, I assume you saw the perp shoot. Have you talked to Mrs. Pena yet? One of the sheriff's deputies went there this morning with a Charleston police officer, but she wasn't there. Based on what I saw on the tape, we put out an APB on her and notified the Transportation Security Administration, but I don't know if we got there in time. She picked up the kids from school yesterday morning. She may be completely innocent, but her actions before and after the shooting are disturbing, and we would like to call her in for questioning. Charleston County will get a warrant for a full search of the premises in her absence. Oh, by the way, we found Maren Steinman tonight. He was at the Doubletree Hotel in Savannah and returned an hour ago. It's pretty clear he's not the perpetrator. He claims he accidentally turned his cell phone off. He was holed up with some chick who wasn't there when the officers talked to him. They just noted the sexy lavender-colored underwear and a pair of leopard print stiletto shoes that were, they were pretty sure of it, not his size. Paul chuckled as he finished, and we ended the conversation. What are the odds of both of them being in Savannah at the same time? Of course, it could have been a coincidence. I've seen quite a few of those in my relatively short career. The closet door was still sticking slightly when I opened it, and I reminded myself that I needed to fix it. She's so meticulous about keeping all her things, all in a row and in one place. I looked for them and couldn't find them. A void appeared in their place in the row, I think they were high-heeled shoes. Actually, Gamma Pony Chelsea's boots that her mom gave her a couple years ago for Christmas. Over $500 at Harrods online store. With a pair of tight yoga pants and her killer legs, she looked great in them, and they weren't there. Suspicion can trigger strange things in a man's mind. And if any mantra penetrates us more than another, it's leave emotions aside. I was taught to recognize when I was acting or reacting with emotion rather than facts. I did just that by allowing my actions to be guided by emotional suspicion. It was 11 o'clock in the evening, 24 hours after I had driven to the scene on Rainbow Row. I'd have to go through the rest of the DVD, but that could wait until tomorrow. Maxwell announced that he needed a late walk, and the two of us headed out into the neighborhood with flashlight and dog poop bag in hand. It was mostly quiet, and after a few minutes I found myself walking up to Carol Bigsby's house and seeing that she had company for the evening. Nothing was changing. Maxwell did his thing next to her mailbox. I picked everything up, and we moved on. It was past midnight when I plopped down in bed and didn't move until 8 in the morning. After a quick run and a light breakfast, I set up the other DVDs, intending to start going through them for clues. But before I could start, I got a call from Paul Montague. "George, we found out where Mrs. Pena flew out to. Mrs. Castelda Portalapena is a Belizean citizen, and she flew into Belize City late last night after arriving in the Dominican Republic by boat. She also withdrew a decent amount of cash from her bank accounts and accessed the family safe deposit box on Friday afternoon. In a place like that, she must have had to run for her money. The U.S. has an extradition treaty with Belize to try to get her back, but after talking to the U.S. attorney last night, it's probably going to be a long story if it ever materializes. They don't easily extradite their own citizens, and when they do, they usually require witnesses for anything that could result in the death penalty or life in prison. I'll keep that in mind if I need to whip someone up, Paul. Do you have any more good news?" He just laughed at me. "We're going to talk to Maren Steinman later. Would you like to join us?" I wanted to and arranged to join them at Steinman's house at 1 o'clock this afternoon. With a fresh mug of coffee and a satisfied Maxwell standing on the porch, I put the DVDs on, starting at 9 o'clock Friday night in reverse order. During the day, the only activity was tearing around the house of Mrs. Steinman and the housekeeper, who arrived at 10 past 10. The next DVD showed an earlier encounter between the two deceased, starting at 10 o'clock on Thursday evening until he left at 2 o'clock in the morning. The earlier activity was a repeat of the previous day, and the DVDs for Tuesday and Wednesday were not eventful. Apparently, Maren Steinman was absent from home all these days. It wasn't until Monday that interest picked up again. On Monday morning, the housekeeper came at the usual time and was gone by noon. Lucy Steinman was not seen in the morning, nor did she move about upstairs. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Maren Steinman arrived home, allowing himself and the diminutive brunette to enter the living room. There was a familiarity between them that indicated this was not their first experience. The woman walked over to the bar and prepared 2 shot glasses. "I take it your wife won't be back until tomorrow?" she asked Steinman, handing him a drink. "Her flight arrives tomorrow morning at 11, so there's no rush, baby." I watched as he took the drink from her hand and pulled her tight size 4 dress off over her head, leaving her standing in size 4 SX panties and a size 3 bra. She stood in front of him, being 5'7" tall, stroking her hand over his. A canary yellow scarf had already fallen to the floor, and Steinman bent down, picked it up, and brought it to his nostrils. A woman weighing about 50 pounds squatted down, balancing on 7.5-inch stilettos. Steinman laid her on her back on the padded couch and began his business. I should have stopped watching, but I couldn't. The camera in the master bedroom showed them both going into the bathroom and 20 minutes later coming out and the woman going downstairs to get her clothes. When she returned, Steinman picked up the yellow scarf again and inhaled its scent before tossing it on the dresser. I remembered the scent. It was Flower Bomb by Victor and Ralph. I paused the DVD, went out on the porch, and patted my faithful friend. "Max, this world is stupid, trust me." Returning to the DVD, I quickly flipped through a tape of the entire daily routine, and around 9 o'clock that evening, Steinman and his mistress entered the bedroom and resumed their lovemaking from the previous day. I watched for a while and then zoomed in on the tattoo on her right buttock. One I'd seen before, and with that, I turned off the DVD player and prepared myself for Maren Steinman. The crime scene footage was taken that morning before we arrived. Paul Montague worked fast. At lunchtime, we grabbed a bite to eat at Human's Deli before going to his place, and I brought up my newly discovered problems. Yes, I went over everything up until last Monday. So you know I'm going to have to talk to her? He asked me. Standard procedure, Paul, I know. Michelle will be back tonight. I'll let her know. After barely reconciling our notes, we both headed over to Steinman's to meet with another county investigator. Mr. Steinman was waiting for us along with his personal attorney. In person, he was rather unimpressive. I could see his years on his face now, but he still looked trim and in good physical shape. Paul introduced himself, and as we shook hands, I saw no hint of recognition, though I didn't expect him to recognize me. We'd never met, of course, and I'd never felt that people in such positions of authority paid any attention to ordinary people unless they wanted something from them. Paul began his questioning. Mr. Steinman, let me express our condolences for your loss and assure you that we have invested considerable resources to bring this case to a satisfactory conclusion. Now, as for the victims, your wife and a man named Carlos Pina, were you aware of their affair? Steinman only shook his head. No. All right, then. With regard to Mr. Carlos Pina, had you ever met or perhaps had any dealings with him, his business or other family members in any way? I don't recall, he replied. The big man was just taking his notes and continued, Okay, now let's go back a few days. You are aware that we have DVDs from your security system that save a few days' worth of records, yes? He nodded in confirmation. Okay, could you give us the name of the person you entertained in this room on Monday afternoon and evening? Steinman conferred with his attorney and gave her name. As he did so, Paul furtively cast a concerned glance at me, and Steinman caught it. At this point, his attorney intervened and insisted that no outside third parties be involved in this interrogation. Paul did not want that. In our view, the consultant, the woman in question, remains a material witness until we question her. Mr. Steinman, in the last 2 weeks, were there other women who visited these premises with or without your wife? I advise my client not to answer that question. We consider it irrelevant. Paul smiled only slightly, pulled out 3 enlarged photographs from his note. Do you recognize the woman in these photographs? Steinman stared for a long time, pondering his answer. He conferred with his attorney, and that was the end of the meeting abruptly. My client will not discuss any further matters with any representative of the Charleston County Sheriff's Office or any other law enforcement agency at this time. If he is not detained for questioning, I ask that you please leave the premises. Paul and I expected this and did not reveal the woman's identity to Steinman because someone who had nothing to hide would have shared the information himself. In his case, he did not reveal that he had lunch with Mrs. Castelda Portalapina, not knowing that it had been caught on surveillance cameras last Wednesday at the same establishment where we had just had lunch, the Human Deli. Warrants had already been issued to seize bank records when they opened Monday morning and to search Steinman's offices on Meeting Street. As we spoke, the Sheriff's Office and the UCPD were already conducting the seizures. At the conclusion of our first meeting, I had to withdraw from the case. Nevertheless, Paul kept me informed, unofficially, of course. At our lunch a little earlier, he explained, Yesterday in Delhi, when I came in for a sandwich, our host had a chat with me. He had heard about the shooting at Steinman's house and informed me that Maren Steinman had been in his establishment a few days earlier. He's a frequent customer here. So I requested security footage, and sure enough, last Wednesday, he had lunch here with a woman. Oddly enough, the woman looked like Mrs. Castelda Portalapina, and she wore a bracelet on her right wrist, similar to the one the perp was wearing at the time of the shooting. As evidence, he provided photos that we now have, as well as the original DVD. At this point, we are assuming that Steinman knew his wife was engaged in adultery and Mrs. Pina either knew about it too, or he let her know about it. I think he paid her to attack him, but now we have to prove it. He may not have even had to pay her. She might have gotten a kick out of what we saw. Either way, he definitely handed her an envelope across the table, and now she's waved goodbye, as they say. Further evidence may help us to provoke her into leaving Belize. I suppose, George, I've said it 100 times. Stupidity ruins everything every time. That evening, while waiting for Michelle to return, I remembered our first meeting. She and her sister Monique were Deadhead fans, and we were at the same Phil, Lesh, and Franz show at the Coliseum. We hit it off right away, and I asked her out that same week. From that moment on, we became something special, and a week later, I had the pleasure of enjoying the special talents of her 5'7", 50-pound, size 4 body, 4SX panties, and size 3 breasts. Michelle turned the key in the front door at 9:45, and Maxwell immediately waved his stumpy tail. His personality around her was different than with me. Between us, we were all manly and male bonding, and with Michelle, he was a puppy again. She walked into the kitchen and tossed her keys on the kitchen table and then came over and hugged and kissed me. "How's your case going?" she asked. "I'm detached from it right now," I replied. "Yes, by the way, where are the gom boots your mom gave you for Christmas?" She looked at me strangely before answering. "Why do you need to know about my goms? I know you won't wear them." "Just curious." I was looking for something in my closet and noticed they weren't there. "Oh, well, I swapped them at Monique's for Fendi shoes. I didn't know you liked them. I didn't say anything. I just offered to— Hey, listen, why don't you take a shower and I'll fix you a drink when you get back?" When she returned, I brought her a glass of wine and a light beer. It had been almost 48 hours since I walked into that house on the East Bay on Friday night. First, let me tell you about a case I've been working on. That's terrific. Paul Montague worked on it, and as always, magnificent. Well, 95 Rainbow Street is a place owned by a guy named Steinman. The victims were his wife and her lover. The guy's wife is the prime suspect, but Paul thinks this guy, Steinman, is involved too. I watched her reaction and saw some hesitation on her face, the tiniest bit of realization. Paul wants to talk to everyone connected to Steinman, including anyone who may have been in the same house before. We have surveillance footage from a few days ago. I paused for effect and saw that Michelle was becoming uncomfortable, although she was trying her best to hide it, but to no avail. She realized that I knew, and there was no point in denying it. I asked, "How long has it been?" "I think almost 6 months." "Why did you even get involved in this? You know how I feel about infidelity." "George, I don't know why." Monique kept telling me how exciting it was, and that she'd already done it twice, and Donnie still hadn't found out anything about it. Donnie was Monique's husband and sure as hell wouldn't want to hear that kind of talk about his favorite daughter-in-law. Monique and I had always done everything together, ever since we were little girls. We never had any secrets from each other. If she did something, I did the same, and vice versa. If I bought a new dress, she did the same. If she bought a new perfume, I had to try it too. That's why she bought that Victor and Rolf you gave me a few months ago. That's how we've always been. "Do you think it's exciting enough to risk marriage?" There were tears in her eyes now, and a picture of an American Beauty tattoo on the right buttock of a very beautiful woman I was very close to surfaced in front of me. Michelle stood up, went to the kitchen, and pulled a bag of fruit snacks out of the cabinet. As she did so, her t-shirt pulled up and exposed a firm, naked, and very beautiful ass. On the left buttock of that beautiful ass was an American Beauty tattoo, identical to the one her identical twin Monique had on her right buttock. "Paul is going to have to talk to her. You realize that, don't you?" She nodded silently, walked back to the table, and kissed her husband. "The end.